Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cure for the Common Game. Today, in deck number 386, we're going to talk about Padim, Consul of Innovation. Now, this particular deck I have had together for a few weeks, but it didn't seem right because I'll be honest with you, it's a blue Artifact Matters deck, and I don't have a Soul Ring for it. So I don't have like a Soul Ring or a Mana Vault, and I really kind of wanted those. Blight Steel would be nice too, but I didn't have them. So I said, you know what? We'll make it work without it. And I played it this past Friday, and it worked. It was kind of an aha moment for me. It's what they call it, a level up moment. Anyway, your artifacts you control have hexproof, and at the beginning of your upkeep, if you got the biggest rock, you get to draw a card. Now, one of those abilities is way more relevant than the others. The drawing one card, it's cool and all, but the artifacts have hexproof is the big deal. Now, my mind went somewhere because obviously you want really big artifacts here. Uh, the aforementioned Blight Steel is really good, but I didn't have a Blight Steel, so I did, in fact, however, have a Dark Steel. So it's going to be hard to beat the 11 mana artifact that is the Dark Steel Colossus in mana cost or in just playability. But that that being the obvious, so you know what? This is another blue artifact deck, and I want to try to. So, Chief of the Foundry and Master of Ethereum give your other artifact creatures +1/+1. That's important. I'm running both of them. And by the way, that's the only two that exist. Now, for what we're trying to do here, those are the only two that'll work. Because I thought my artifacts have hexproof. Go with me here. March of the Machines. All non-creature artifacts are now artifact creatures with power and toughness equal to its converted mana cost. Now, Magus of Lattice turns everything into an artifact. So here's what happens in this magical Christmas land scenario. You've got one of your +1/+1 guys out, your Magus of Lattice, and you drop the March of the Machines. And once you drop the March of the Machines, you win the game. Probably because most people will concede. Because what happens is all lands become artifact creatures that are 0/0 and thus put into a graveyard. You cannot even tap them on the way out because they are sick. Or, well, uh, the ones that are in play are not sick already. But furthermore, each successive land drop, if they drop a land, they can't even do the 1 mana answer because, oh, you can't tap that land on the way out because it's sick. And you keep yours from dying by your artifact creature you control get +1/+1. So you become the only one with land forever. That is a monster of a move. Yeah, it's really non-friendly. But the Magus of Lattice also works well with Memnarch. Now, Memnarch, I actually got a when I played it this past Friday, I didn't see the Magus of Lattice at all or the March of the Machines. I had to play just whatever I drew, obviously, and I drew the Memnarch. And I've played Memnarch a bunch. Y'all know I've got him in several decks, but I had a moment of clarity with Memnarch because it was at the point where the table knew I was the threat. And they took aim at Padim to kill him because Padim was making Memnarch hexproof and all my other stuff. Memnarch was the problem. We all know it. Memnarch had to go, but nobody could touch him because of Padim. And in response, I made Padim an artifact. It's the first time I've ever used Memnarch defensively, And it was beautiful because I made Padim an artifact, and he doesn't say other artifacts because he's not one innately. He just says artifacts you control have hexproof, and then Padim had hexproof. Yeah, that was a moment, and I'll probably be looking for more scenarios like that since it has happened to me. But a defensive use of a typically offensive card, love versatility like that. Anyway, since we're going to play with big mana creatures, big mana rocks, we got to have some ramp. So let's get to it. As I mentioned, no Soul Ring, no Mana Vault. I know. But we got Sky Diamond, Worn Power Stone, Dream Stone Hedron, Mind Stone, Gilded Lotus, the Mirror, the Other Mirror, Thought Vessel that doubles as the no max hand size, Hedron Archive. Now we're going to get into some. Y'all know I consider Voltaic Key a mana rock anyway, even though in this deck it's way better than a mana rock because it untaps a good chunk of your stuff. It is quite possibly the missing piece to every puzzle. Ethereum Sculptor is going to make most of your deck cheaper, and Jor's Familiar. Now keep in mind, if you've got the Lattice out, they're not artifacts till they hit the board. They're just colorless in your hand, so it doesn't matter. We have a lot of natural artifacts to play. Running a High Tide for that one big explosive turn that we know we're going to have. Wayfarer's Baubles kind of ramp. We got ourselves a Manador. After a fashion. Because, let's face it, you look at this card, and I've looked at it for a long time, and I put it in the deck almost against my own better judgment, and then I drew it, and you know what? I was able to use it like every single turn. Probably because I had Memnarch, and, you can activate artifacts with it, so it's like, and you get double blue out of it, so it's beautiful. Now, Blink Moth Urn is not the thing to do with the Michael's Lattice, obviously, because if you draw into that route, you don't want to take away all their lands and then give them a bunch of free mana, because let's face it, they're going to come at you with it. But in the scenario where you don't draw the Lattice, we are always going to come out ahead here. Well, most of the time. And my last, what I would consider ramp card, is Clock of Omens. Now, this is another one that Friday was the first time I ever cast it, and it's dumb. It's dumb with the clock. Because I was able to tap my creatures, tap my those static artifacts that don't really do anything. They just kind of sit there and do their thing. I was able to tap all those and untap Dreamstone Hedron or whatever and just continually get mana, and that was really good. Unwinding Clocks in here because it's amazing. And yeah, in either scenario, it's good. Shall we look at some creatures? These are all like artifact creatures. So you saw the Darksteel. Now, yes, I'm that guy that runs Tika's Dragon. I love it because it costs 9 mana, and that's normally the downside and the reason why people don't love it. But in this deck, 5/5 Flying Trample, and that's pretty much it. Let's face it. Rampage 4 says you can't be blocked by more than one creature, pretty much, because nobody's going to make it a 9/9 to, unless the combat is so overwhelmingly in their favor, and you're probably not swinging. Chroma's Memorial, because why not? It's a big rock, helps out our team, and protects us from some bad stuff. We've got a Platinum Angel, for obvious reasons. Duplicate. Now, I'll be honest with you, Friday was the first time I've ever actually cast Duplicate in my life. I know this is considered to be a very popular EDH card for us, but I've never used it. Or I've never cast it. I may put it in decks, but I've never actually cast this card. And it did some work. I did it more defensively than anything else because Audric was sharing abilities that them angels just didn't need. So, and we was all dying or gonna die because we know how that deck works, Carmen. Darksteel Juggernaut is just a big old beast. Now, 5 mana, not really super expensive, but you'd be surprised how many revolutions around the table in my upkeep for Padim I would check, and a 3 or a 4 mana rock that I had would win. So 5's not real bad. Meteor Golem gets us some removal. Sharding Sphinx is going to make a ton of little Thopters. Traxos, he's a cheap beater. I mean, why not? The Weatherlight. And now, Merchant's Dockhand, kind of neat. I'll admit the only reason why it's in here is because I am running the clock. Without the clock, this is all right at best. But, you spend 4 mana, you tap, I don't know what, 4? If you're wanting to get a true impulse. So you look at the top 4, put one in your hand, the rest on the bottom. So, I mean, it's not the best card, but I did want to give it, its day in the sun and try to use it. I drew it and I cast it when I played it, but it was already to the point where that game was pretty much sealed and it didn't really matter at that point. So I didn't even get a chance to activate it because I was dumping all my mana into Memnarch. But yeah, that's how it be sometimes. Let's look at some card draw. Now, one with the machine is beautiful. It goes right with Padim, obviously so. It's Russian Knowledge. Similar card, costs 1 more mana. The Archmage. I didn't realize until I listed this deck on Tapped Out that, man, this has only been printed in Mirrodin. That's it, ever. Huh. And then Frantic Search. Of course, we've got our commander as a slow card draw. I'm running Memorial to Genius. You got some leftover mana and you want to draw some cards. Counter Magic, pretty much your basic suite. Counterspell, Arcane Denial, Negate, Unwind, and Swan Song. First time I cast Swan Song, and I realized, Dana Roach, this is the truth. The 1 mana counter ability, that was phenomenal. It kept Narset in check that turn, because I really believe somebody was going to die that turn. I'm not exactly sure what was happening, what was getting pumped up on Narset, but it was one of those, that can't happen. Now, Ivory Tower's in there. Yeah, we might accidentally gain some incidental life off of it, but y'all know this is probably a placeholder for the Soul Ring. Let's zoom out a little bit here. Witchbane Orb keeps people from targeting you with, various edict effects or what have you. It's really better than you would think. People can't take your turn. They can't Emrakul you. It's beautiful. And it does have that, the Curse Rider, which is not nothing. There have been games I would have loved to have had a Witchbane Orb just for the Curse Clause. And Soul of Digger. I've been a fan of Soul of Digger since Alliances. I love it. And just to be able to reuse your cards over and over again, especially your one-shot counters and draws. Now, here, let's do the rest of the non-basics real quick. Of course, we have a Reliquary Tower, Seed of the Synod, and Phyrexia's Core to, randomly get rid of an artifact if for some reason that's what we need to do. Planar Bridge, kind of a tutorish effect. Kind of. It's the tutor, isn't it? I mean, if you've got the clock and some rocks, man, you can tutor on everybody's turn. But now keep in mind, if you're tutoring on everybody's turn, you should probably just win on your turn. Really, because nobody likes 5 tutors and then you take a 20-minute turn and then you pass and nothing happens. So I try to be responsible with it. It's cool if you can win the game. if we're just durdling to be, yeah, get the game over. Game's got to end so we can play more games. Treasure Mage, another tutor card. I kind of like it. Whir of Invention. It's all about getting the artifacts because let's face it, I looked around and I didn't have a fabricate either. So, Magistrate Scepter is really kind of cute with the clock and lots of artifacts and lots of mana. So, I thought that was neat. The ability to you're not going to take infinite turns with it, but you're going to take enough where it's going to upset somebody. Thran Temporal Gateway kind of help you. This may have been, should I put this with the mana ramp because you're circumventing the mana cost. Yeah, it's 8 mana, but it's 4 and 4. So, and then after that, it gets really good. Antiquities War, figured I would give it a shot. Making your artifacts 5/5 beast to end of turn seems really good for that turn. Reconstruction. By the way, Reconstruction. This is an Antiquities card. It looks like a beta, but as we all know, Reconstruction was not in beta. It was in Antiquities. They just every single copy of it just left off the expansion symbol. So how I'm not exactly certain the current policy on misprints, but the way Magic was back then was if there was a misprint, they did not fix it because they knew they were making a collectible game and they didn't want to make it hyper collectible because if they had fixed it, then you'd have more copies of one than the other, and then everybody would want the short printed one, and yeah, so they just. It's like that revised blue card that has a green border. I mean, every one of them's that way. Now, Synod Artificer is my... I'm going to call it a fair Mistress Helix. If that's even possible. I'm not sure if anything that remotely does what Mistress Helix does. But you tap X non-creature artifacts if you got the lattice out and the clock, you can legit just tap everybody out. During their upkeep, tap everything you own. Yeah. The Helix does that with lands. If you've got the lattice, this will do it with anything. So tap all your creatures, your planeswalkers, tap your enchantments too, just cuz. Yeah, I don't have the Mistress Helix in here because, well, I'll be honest with you, I may not have one. I didn't look, but I felt even that was a little too over the line. Efficient Construction is going to give us some Thopters help out. Tezzeret, Artifice Master, because he's really good. He's not, the awesome first Tezzeret that we had that was just ridiculous, but he's still pretty good. The Humiliator. Creatures your opponents control lose all abilities and have base power 1/1. We're going to have Metalcraft, so that's going to happen. Drafna's Restoration, because this is kind of an insurance policy. We may draw it and never cast it. If so, that's fine. Like I said, it's an insurance policy. It's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Steel Artifact. I love how you don't even have to read the card. What is that Steel Artifact? What does it do? Well, not to oversimplify, but it steals an artifact. Echo Storm. Now, I had Padim out, and I drew this card. And I'll admit, I drew the card before I had Padim out, and me drawing this card is what made me cast my commander, because I can see this Commander Storm thing as a little greed monster on your shoulder. Come on, you can get one more. You can get one more storm count out of it. Cast your commander one more time. If it dies, that's okay. Master Thopterist, kind of Efficient Construction 2.0, except that you get to sack 2 rocks and draw a card, which is really neat. And then our last card is Broodstar, the original Affinity monster. Now, here again, Let's zoom out so you can see that star. Broodstar Affinity is what that was the deck in original Mirrodin that they wanted us to build, that they wanted us to play and tweak and stuff like that. They never would have dreamed this Ravager Affinity was going to take over. I mean, I think that was evident. But Broodstar had its day in the sun for a little while because this is like the modern day Galta. I mean, you just played it obscenely, quicker than you thought you should be able to. But I like it. I put it in there as kind of a throwback, and it's 10 mana. If you happen to have the lattice, it's a 10 mana artifact, so that's pretty neat too. That is what I have got for Padim. Like I said, it was pretty rude. It did take the table. Um, as soon as I made Padim an artifact, giving him hexproof, the player who was taking aim on him said, "Well, there's kind of nothing else I can do." And then I said, "All right." To the rest of the guys, I was like, "Well," because I was trying to want to get to more games, and I said, "All right, this is how it works. On your turn, I'm gonna take all your stuff forever." Which it's not a Memnarch deck, but all of the pieces that make Memnarch amazing were there. So it felt like an oversight not to have Memnarch in it. So it's not just another Memnarch deck, Danny. Anyway, I do appreciate y'all watching. Y'all let me know what you think. And hey, if you've got any more ideas for 100 Days of Magic, because I did day 6 this morning. I think we're going to do a pack opening for tomorrow or today if you're seeing this. I think day 7 we're going to open a pack of something. I don't know what, but let's see what happens. I do appreciate y'all watching, but right now I think it's time to shuffle and cut.